I'm Izy Boyd, your host and agent of change champion. I'm digital strategist, community builder, and storyteller passionate about amplifying the people who are reshaping our world through innovation, impact, and bold ideas. On Conversations with Agents of Change, we go beyond titles and achievements to explore the real journeys behind change, the challenges, the courage, and the ripple effects that transform communities and industries. If you believe business can be a force for good and that one voice can spark a movement, you are in the right place. Today, we are heading into the heart of North Belfast to meet someone who has spent his career strengthening the people and places that are often overlooked. Tim Magowan, director, coach, and mentor at the 174th Trust, based in Dunkern Complex. Tim's work focuses on strengthening charities and marginalized communities, and he's been doing it quietly, consistently, and compassionately for years. This conversation is about the power of showing up, even when the work is slow, even when the challenge is heavy, and even when the world moves on to the next big thing. So let's step into Tim's world. Tim, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here. And welcome to the Duncairn.
I love it. It's beautiful. I always like to begin with asking about the persons behind the role. So before 174 Trust, before the mentoring, before the leadership, who were you?
Way back when I was a law student who spent a summer in the States in inner city Philadelphia, and that totally transformed my life. And I guess I moved from somebody who was focused on justice, I was doing a lot of grade, to somebody who became very passionate about social justice. So that led me to work for Christian Aid, campaign on fair trade. I worked for years for a faith-based agency called Tier Funds, helping local churches to support communities to survive and thrive. And then I guess increasingly I felt a real sense of wanting to bring the international experience I have back here and work out how do I support and strengthen charities here. So I worked for Coromila for 5 years as their director, helping to strengthen them. And then I've moved here.
That's brilliant. What planted the first seeds of service in your life? Was that the experience you had with these religious organizations, or what did it move within you to say, I need to do this?
Well, there's a way back answer to that. So my dad was a minister, my mum was a teacher, so there's probably something in that.
Yes.
But the kind of iconic moment for me was I went and worked in inner city Philadelphia for summer. There's a particular thing that happened every day as we walked in. We were a group of college students who were running a summer camp. We were doing good in inverted commas. And every day as we walked down, this guy shook our hand. And I thought he was a friendly local guy. But in the last day, they told us that he was a local gang lord
Okay.
who had allowed us in. None of the girls were to be touched. None of the guys were to be seriously injured.
Oh.
And that for me kind of sums up that place, because I went to the States very naively thinking I was going to somewhere almost like Dick Whittington with gold on the streets. But what I discovered in that inner city place was like malnourished children with red tints in their hair, an incredibly unfair society where we were in a African American, that was the term, in black community, which was incredibly impoverished. And we were literally across the street, like literally across the river from the rocky steps on the museum at Philadelphia, which is kind of part of the American dream. And so you had malnourished kids, you had gangland culture, a lot of drinking and drugs. And that for me was so shocking, that visceral sense of need that I just wasn't expecting. And yet in the middle of that, I also discovered a group of people who wanted to bring about change.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really inspiring. So I was with a faith-based organization, but there was folk beyond that. And I also discovered in the middle of that, and that was really powerful for me, the words of Martin Luther King, who came out of a community just like that. And particularly his vision of a better world. And in fact, extraordinarily for me, like right down when I arrived here on my first day, I noticed up on the wall was the particular words that really inspired me about having a vision that every child will have 3 square meals a day for their body, education, and dignity, equality, freedom for their spirit. I believe what self-centered people have torn down, other-centered people can build back up again. I find that so inspiring. So that profoundly shook me in terms of it opened me up to, I guess, what I understand as structural injustice
Yeah.
now, need, but also it planted the initial seed. It took me a long time to see that about there's a lot of good in the world underneath the surface. And my role, I think, is about how to strengthen and support that.
Absolutely. And it is all about the conversations with agents of change because well, we believe that this is so important. We need to talk about this. So I'm really happy to hear that. And Tim, the 174 Trust has such a strong presence in Belfast. It's a place woven into the city's social and cultural fabric, holding space for hope, the journey. What pulled you towards the trust?
I think it was so for people that don't know, maybe I'll explain a little bit about your trust. And then,
Yes.
so it was a little cafe that was run by a local church like 40 years ago. And the church shut down, and the little cafe, little charity, bought the church buildings. And over the last 40 years has supported local people to set up brilliant community-based programs. So we reckon, I was telling you earlier, we reckon that we benefit people 65,000 times a year.
Thanks.
So we have just an absolutely beautiful arts centre where 8,000 people come for concerts and classes in the refurbished church building. We have 200 people a week come to our 12 AA groups with 2 boxing clubs, with 2 nurseries on site, with 8, I think, at the moment. Disability club supporting 100 children a week. We've got a couple of arts-based community programs. And so what pulled me to that was going right back to what happened in the States for me was a recognition that I feel wherever I want to be working is supporting communities in needs, but it's strengthening what they are doing. And what I saw that was the trust was doing that in spades. So this is an area I was telling you earlier. It was a murder mile during the Troubles. Nearly 600 people were killed in this area because of sectarian violence. It's also a highly deprived area, but it's also filled with lots of people doing lots of great things.
And then the trust amazing.
Yeah, and the trust has done brilliant work at supporting local people to respond to local need. And I love that it's not just me, landing in and doing good. It's supporting local communities, responding to local needs. And so I love the ethos of that. They had done lots of great things that they needed somebody initially who would help to strengthen some of the core bits. So I was able to come in and help them just with some of their financial sustainability, their HR, their health and safety, some of those boring background things that you need to happen.
What's so neat, so useful.
So important. And today's society, you can't run without that.
Mm.
And then their director left, and I was privileged. Then I got that job, and I've loved being able to be part of the process of helping to grow and develop some of their projects. Or disability project, for example, is doubled in size. So that's wonderful for me. And we've got a whole pile of plans of things that we hope to do. So it felt like a place where the ethos really connected for me, and also a place where I felt I had something to offer them,
Yeah.
and also they have a lot to offer me.
I love that. I think it's very important that dual, like feeding and helping, and also getting something back
Yeah,
for you, and
so both.
to feel that you are doing something good and you're growing out of that. So your work focuses heavily on marginalized communities, those who often face multiple layers of difficulty. What does strengthening these communities actually look like in practice? I'd love to hear a moment, big or small, where you saw real transformation take place.
Oh, so I had a very profound moment happen for me in a field in eastern Uganda in 2012, where I went to an area and I met a guy called Sam. And Sam was HIV positive, disabled, lived in an area that was war torn. And as he told me his story, he told me that in his past, there was times when he couldn't feed his children, and he was quite tearful about that. And I find that very moving. And his story tracks the journey I've been on, because he described how initially nobody cared. And then the local organizations gave him stuff,
Yeah.
but that wasn't very useful. And then the organization we work with started essentially to coach him. They didn't use that language, but they said, Sam, I realize life is tough. What do you have? And he had some carpentry skills that raised a bit of money. He also had a bit of vision. And so when I met him, we sat in his orange grove, which was extraordinary that he had magicked up over the last 10 years. And that was quite something in that area. And he was able to point to his children going to school. He pointed out the staff that he had. But that was good. But the thing which happened, which was stunningly powerful for me, was he said, but that wasn't enough for me. He pulled out a certificate, and it was a certificate of a charity that he had set up himself to help, yeah, other people to go on the journey like him. And so for me, what I saw, and like I said, against myself, I arrived and probably saw him as a victim. I left seeing him as a giant because he was flourishing. He was able to provide for his family and he'd become a citizen. Yeah. And so fully flourishing in every possible way. And what that so inspired me that that approach then was the way the organization we'd worked with, the local church, who had started with his strength and nurtured that in the middle of all this need. And actually in that area, they were helping 80,000 people to go on journeys like that. Now, Sam's story was particularly amazing. Yeah. But we met lots of people with stories who were on a journey like Sam's. And so for me, that has always stayed with me. How can I show up in a way where I support the good that's here and nurture that? Absolutely. I love it. And I think it's so powerful. The Donker Complex itself has become a space for creativity, showcasing, supporting, and developing the work of emerging local artists. Also, it's a space for healing and cross community connection. How does its story shape your work today? So, what I love about what we do here is I think we support people like across a whole range of things that they want to do. So we provide services for people who are disabled. We provide nursery experience, in nursery for young families and young parents who are struggling. But also, like all of us, we love fun and joy and music. Yeah. And what is striking underneath that is the power of finding a common cause. If your child is disabled, it matters much less if you're Protestant, Catholic, if it's black or white, if you're gay or straight. It's that that's most important. And actually, that disability project, I think, is one of the best peace building projects I've ever seen because it brings together people from right across any number of different spectrums rallied around helping their child. Wonderful. So to our arts, if you like music or cross stitch or portraiture, once you've got that common connection, that helps to transcend and helps people to build relationships they wouldn't otherwise have. And one of the wonderful things that the Art Centre has done is helping people in the local community, the wider Belfast community, and increasingly across Ireland. We have a lovely connection with an art centre in Cork. Okay. And we do an exchange. We're in the process of hoping to develop and grow that. In fact, we've just won the contract to run FLA fringe events around Belfast. So it's 60 events around the FLA. And that's all about helping people from all kinds of different backgrounds. And particularly in that instance, backgrounds probably like mine that wouldn't normally connect with the FLA to connect. And so I love that sense of common cause that we're about. And that to me is how we'll get to a better future if we can find those common, build those relationships and find common ways that we can help to make life a bit better for all of us. Absolutely. It's so powerful. And you're not just a director, you're a coach and a mentor. And that tells me your approach is deeply people focused. So, how does mentoring show up in your day to day work? Oh, it's so important to me. The way I have learned to manage is by supporting the people I work with to draw out the good that's already there. So a good example of that is both when I started at Cormida and when I started here. My way of starting was I met all the staff and I asked them three questions. What's working? What could be better? And what can I do? Okay. And that, in both of those situations, I think within 10 days, gave me a plan. Yeah. And gave more than that, gave us a plan because I was able to play that back and say, this is what I think I've heard. These are the great things that are happening. Here's some of the gaps and here's what I think you're saying needs to happen. And my job then is to enable all of us to do that. And so for me, my primary role is as facilitator of change, of enabling the whole system to function better. And the best way to do that, I found, is to bring the best out of the staff team. And they very often know in their situation, like I don't know that much about the nursery. I don't know much about disability or arts, but my job is to enable them to come up with good ideas, to work on that with them, and then to work out how do we progress that through. So that approach, I think, is the coaching approach has been really important for me in enabling the change that then has happened, because we're using their strengths and developing synergy.
That's what I was going to say. That is bringing that strength back to them and see, because they are absolutely experts in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're reflecting on them, well, where can we find the best answer, or how can we get to where we want to be? It's so empowering, and I think it is how teams work well.
Yeah.
When everybody helps each other to find the best answers. So I love that. What's one piece of guidance you find yourself returning to again and again when supporting emerging leaders?
That's a good question. So you said me that question before, and initially I bridled a wee bit at it because because I'm a coach, because I'm not really mad on guidance or advice. My approach is to ask questions and to enable people to come up with answers. But I guess the thing which was then was a bit more reflection, I thought, was I think I had learned to, which has been really helpful for me, what's the opportunity in this particular problem? My job is to solve lots of problems. Now, some of those are easier, some of those are bigger. But what I've also found is almost in every problem, there is some kind of opportunity.
Awesome.
And let's see it as that. How do we bring some good out of this situation, even if it's a particularly difficult thing? And for me, that helps us all to be more resilient and also more future focused. And I guess
Absolutely.
that's probably my top thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's how you're helping other people to grow as leaders. And I think it's very important, especially in the charity sector and the community sector. So that's really empowering, because you're dealing with so many no's or blockages that it's very easy to lose your direction and lose hope. Yeah. So by having these conversations and showing different avenues and supporting other leaders, I suppose it's getting back to the right track and say, okay, you have lost your passion today, but that's not forever. So you'll get it back tomorrow. And I think it's very powerful.
And that is a very important point, that the coaching approach is not just about, because the way I've described it is kind of like it's helped us all to develop solutions together, which is good. But the deeper thing that you're aiming to do is enable people to grow and develop as leaders.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the more developed we all are as leaders, me included, the better, stronger, more resilient we will be as an organization.
Absolutely. And I think that will permeate to other areas of their lives, because there are people who are working in the nursery. They'll pass that on to their team, and the team will pass it on to the children. The children will pass it on to their mothers and fathers and family members. So I think it's that ripple effect in truth that is helping us change the world. So I think it's very powerful. The truth is, community work asks for a lot of the people who do it. Tim, what have been some of the hardest seasons in your journey, and how you did navigate them emotionally, practically, and spiritually?
Yeah. So I think there's always a yin and yang coming in to a new organization, as I did that at Cornwall Land here, and trying to get, I guess I described a little bit of that, trying to get your feet under the desk of what actually are the issues here. And there's such a, particularly as the leader of an organization, there's so many things. There's the strategy, the operations, all of the internals, the relationships, the finances. There's a lot. And what's really striking is there isn't actually a charity leadership. There's very few charity leadership courses. You kind of have to learn it as you go. So that I certainly find that has been a bit of a bumpy ride. To know you kind of, you're tuning and very often coming into lots of stuff which has been waiting for you. But as I've said, what really helped to smooth that ride was enabling people was trying to show up as opportunity and enabler and someone who can support teams to get through whatever we're going through. That has been the thing which has really helped me. And I guess I've been fortunate because I've seen other leaders before in my past that have done that, and I've been able to learn from them. I've been able to learn from the coaching, and I guess I've learned some experience as I go.
That's brilliant. I really like that. And what keeps you going in moments when your programs feel slow or invisible?
I think it's the small moments of change of taking a little breather, smelling the coffee.
Yeah.
And I think of one of my members of my team was telling me a story about a child that came into the nursery who had lots of issues, struggled with speaking, and just the development that they have gone on over a recent year because the nursery team has done such a good job. And, just from being able to ride their trike a bit better to be beginning to speak and beginning to engage, just noticing the difference. And I think that I've learned that it's really important to be noticing those stories and also being able to collect or share some of those stories that you then are able to share elsewhere. Really young guy came into their disability club last year, really difficult behavior. We had to be in some quite tough boundaries, but over time, the team has just provided him with a really nurturing environment. And the other day when I was in, he came up, was bumping hands, wanted to chase and run around. It was clear to me he was a fundamental different child. He was the same child, he had the same quite profound disabilities, but he was relaxed. He felt safe. He felt nurtured. He was able to come up to somebody he didn't know particularly well and play. That, just being able to see that change is really important.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely spot on when you say that when you feel that things are not going very well, pause and notice how far you've gone. It's really important for us to re-energize and to keep going. And I think that, as you said, telling all these stories and noticing,
Yeah.
it absolutely makes difference. And I'm agree with that. Change doesn't happen alone. Who are the people who walk alongside with you in this work? Who are the quiet heroes that we may never hear or read about it, but that make the trust mission possible?
The people who've been significant for me. So it's been a few. The risk of naming a few, you miss out some of the others. But there's a couple of people that particularly spring to mind. So my first ever job, my manager at Christian Aid was this guy called Kevin McCullough, who's I'm still friendly with. He was inspiring about fair trade, about justice, gave me an understanding, which I now would see about the structural injustice that keeps so many people poor, and we need to create a more just society. And the super practical way that Christian talked about that was about fair trade chocolate or fair trade trainers. And that was just so inspiring for me. It was a totally different way of seeing the world. But Kevin also embodied that. He lived in a low income community, played a part in his local community himself, him and his wife, through their local church and community involvement. And also just in his style of how he worked. He was so good at engaging with all people and bringing good out of some of that, as we did with through me. And that has left a real indelible mark on me, which has shaped me so much as a person
Yeah.
and also how I work today. And I'm really fortunate I'm still friendly with Kevin all these years on. He's a West Ham fan at the moment, so he needs all the support he can get. So there is this team that's struggling. And I've also had this lovely relationship over the years with a guy called Andrew McCracken, who also employed me. I work in Tier Fund with him, and 25 years on, we run the Circles of Change together. And some people say we're very similar. We are. He has just consistently been around in my life in a way that has opened up new possibilities for me. The Circles, he had seen it's a possibility and recruited me in to help to develop it. Excuse me, around Tier Fund, he was forever, which is such a great sounding board for me. And I guess those two people are the ones that particularly I've grown and developed so much through them. And I guess my style has been shaped. And I hope that in some small way, I can help to create environments or relationships which are also nurturing for others, like they've been nurturing for me. So
Yes, pass it on as well.
yeah,
But
yes.
so I want to talk about the city now because in this city is very layered in its history. How do you build trust, real, meaningful trust in communities where trust has been so fragile? And what do you think the role of art, culture, storytelling, playing, healing, and connection in their care?
So, such a good question. So, trust is eroding full stop, in wider society. We know that globally, trust is really declining. I feel that I love Belfast as a city, but it's still very boxed and bubbled. I live in a very middle class white Protestant world. But what I've seen is that when you create the psychological safety that allows people to reach out and hear the stories of others, real power opens up. And so we've, over the last 7 years, Andrew and another friend of mine, Lisa, and I've developed this model called the Circle of Change. So we were talking about 15 people who represent the diversity of the city. Everyone, low income, high income, gay, straight, different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds. And the power of that group is when people feel safe enough to tell a bit of their story, what you find is relationships form and goodness erupts.
Yeah.
And that to me is so powerful. So I think of in last year's group, a young black woman who told a story about how racist Belfast was, and particularly how people in Belfast were so poor at challenging, in her experience, racism. And that was really powerful for our group. And it led the group to raise some money, and we invested that money in a lovely local project using traditional Irish music to welcome immigrants into West Belfast. And that's a lovely, practical outworking.
Absolutely.
It also was interesting because one of the things that the group then said back to the person who was talked about the racism was that we need to be challenging racism, but also be aware that you stepped into a context where we have all together learned not to challenge things,
Yes.
say nothing,
Mm.
as the phrase is, because of the conflict we've had. Now, that's not an excuse, but there is a cultural understanding there that's important for people to be aware of. And we all need to transcend that. The world's different, but that is something that's real. And so I thought that there was some mutual learning there that I really loved.
Yeah.
And so I passionately, what I have seen over and over and over again is that when you help people to build relationships, share a little bit of their challenge, but also some of the good things that happen, good things emerge from that.
Absolutely, yes. And that's very powerful.
Yeah.
When you look back on your journey so far, what are the moments that stayed with you, the ones that remind you why this work matters? I know you've mentioned the circle of change and those impactful stories that give you that, yeah, we're going in the right direction. Is there something that you could still think that is the moment that it makes me feel I'm in the right path?
Do you mean at the moment or more generally?
And more generally, is there something that you makes you feel I'm in the right path?
I'm honestly not sure. It's big moments. Like there's certainly things that I'm really proud that I've done, but I genuinely think it's more about the smaller things where life is a tiny bit better. So what's popped into my mind is a funny little story where we got £30,000 for new sensory equipment for a disability team, and that was great because they've been working just essentially in a big church hall, and we had lovely soft play area and sensory room, and we worked really hard. There'd been lots of building work that needed to be done before we put the sensory equipment in, and it took a long. There was a year of process, and the first children arrived in, and I thought, I'm going to clear my diary. I'm going to go down and watch this because this is the moment. And I arrived down to the sound of a child wailing, like really upset, which was a real shock. Why is this? And the staff could see how unsettled I was by this, and like she was properly kicking and screaming. And I said, well, why is this? And they said, Tim, don't worry, don't worry. The problem is that she loves the sensory equipment so much, she doesn't want to share. And in a funny way, that little story, because it's a wee bit furious,
Yeah.
has really stayed with me because, the aim of that was always that life was a bit better. And people in our care to have a really good experience and to feel that they have equipment that they can really come alive with. Now, obviously, there's also a bit of learning for her about having to share. That's part of the work. But that equipment has, like, they love it. They run John on the soft play equipment. In the sensory room, we have children who are very profoundly disabled, very challenging behaviors, but it's very calming being the lights, the bubbles, the sensory feel of it. And that is great for them. It's great for our staff. So we have one young person who we've had to have, we had for a while, we had 4, 5, 6 staff members on because she struggled in the environment we were in. But in that environment, she's super chill. And we only have to have a couple of staff and they love working with her in it. And so for me, it's about, like I was saying, seeing the small steps. Yeah. And that ultimately, that's what change. I used to think, that change was something really big. Increasingly now, I just think it's whatever's the next step.
Absolutely. And I've learned that so far as well, because I believe that change had to be something spectacular and very powerful and very policy changing and worldwide changing. But now I discover that it's something that happens like in everyday's lives and is impacting people more than, continents and countries and stuff. So as you look ahead, what gives you hope? What future do you want to help share for next generation of community leaders?
So I think in the current context, political context, it's really hard to feel hopeless because we're besieged by an array of just really difficult stories. But yet, when I focus not on the sky or the high level of that, when I focus on actually what's around, what I see, loads of people wanting to do something good in the world.
Yeah.
And I see that every day here at, in the Duncairn Clubhouse. People showing up and doing their bit. The boxers showing up and training guys who maybe would be on the street doing other things. Nursery welcoming in kids who are marginalized and have challenges. Just as you arrived, we had a situation with a young person who my team have worked so hard to keep involved, even though his behavior is so challenging, but they're keeping going. Are in the circle change, seeing how that sharing the stories leads to this goodness, not just in the circle, but of their friends and family who give money and support us. And so for me, that is what I try and focus on. What is the good that's here and how can we develop that a little bit?
Yes. And speaking of the circle, how can we get involved? Is there anything we can do to support the circles?
Well, we are currently raising money for the current one. If people want to donate, they together have realized that what they want to do is to tackle isolation. And particularly that was influenced by a young Iranian woman that told this gorgeous story about how she's involved in a group of refugees and asylum seekers who meet isolated older local people. And that group works really well because the immigrants are able to practice their English and the isolated local people are able to help them with their English, but also it gives them a connection, gives them something to do in the day.
Yeah, that's
For it,
nice.
like, well, yeah, like brilliant. So we want to support more groups like that. And also another issue which has come up from community workers on the ground is the whole issue about debt management, but money management, helping family training. And so our current group is raising some money, and our idea, or not what's going to happen, is they're going to choose together as a group to invest that in projects as a community foundation. So that feels like a great thing. Or there's opportunities to be involved down the line. We are hoping that we will do lots more over time. We had a new one start this week, and we're hoping that next year we'll have another 3 or 4 start. So
Sounds great.
contact us, and we'd love to be involved.
Absolutely. I'm going to leave that on the notes because I think it's so relevant. And the more people get involved, the bigger reach we will have. So, yes, I'm really happy to hear that.
And a super practical thing, that people could do is we have a cracker little cafe here at the Duncairn and an amazing array of artists that come.
Yeah.
Come and see it. You find an absolutely stunning building, brilliant artists, and cracker coffee.
Perfect. I love that. And I was checking out the menu and everything looks so delicious. So absolutely, I'm going to have a lunch there. So, in your own words, what does being an agent of change means to you?
Someone who's able to bring good out of challenge.
Love it. That's very good. Team, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your honesty, and your journey with us. Your work at the 174 Trust is a reminder that change doesn't always look like a headline. Sometimes it looks like presence, consistency, and the decision to listen deeply. To our listeners, if Tim's story moved you today, share this episode with someone working in charity or the community world. And if you want to learn more about the 174 Trust and their work in Belfast, you can explore their website, The link is on the show notes. I'm Izy Boyd, and this has been Conversations with Agents of Change. Thank you for listening, and remember, every act of courage, no matter how small, has the power to spark a ripple. This podcast is produced by the Change Impact Group.